The classroom door burst open with such force that it slammed against the wall, causing everyone to jump. Marcus Williams, absorbed in the final question of the Advanced Placement Calculus exam, looked up to see two uniformed police officers flanking Principal Harrington, whose tight-lipped expression sent a chill down Marcus's spine. 23 pairs of eyes followed the adults as they marched directly to Marcus's desk, all pretense of discretion abandoned. "Marcus Williams," Principal Harrington announced, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "Please gather your things and come with us immediately." Behind her stood Mrs. Peterson, the test proctor, arms crossed and chin lifted with unmistakable satisfaction. Marcus's pencil clattered to the desk. "What I'm not finished with." "Your test has been invalidated," Mrs. Peterson interjected. "We have reason to believe you've been cheating." The accusation hung in the air like toxic gas. The classroom erupted in hushed whispers as Marcus, the school's top mathematics student, stared in disbelief. His hands began to tremble as the larger of the two officers stepped forward, hand resting casually on his holster. "Sir, please comply with the principal's request," the officer said, his voice low but carrying an unmistakable edge. Marcus looked desperately at Mr. Collins, his teacher, but the man merely looked away, his face a mask of professional neutrality. As Marcus stood, Mrs. Peterson reached over and snatched the Excellence in Mathematics pin from his lapel, the award he'd received just last week at the Honors Assembly. "You won't be needing this anymore," she said, dropping it into her pocket. Just 3 weeks earlier, Marcus had been hunched over his desk in the family's modest apartment, surrounded by textbooks and practice exams. The sounds of his younger siblings playing in the next room filtered through the thin walls as his mother, Denise, placed a steaming mug of tea beside him. "You're going to wear yourself out, baby," she said, rubbing his shoulders. "You've been at it for hours." Marcus rolled his neck and offered a tired smile. "I can't afford to miss a single point. Mom, these state exams are everything if I want that scholarship." Denise Williams nodded, understanding the weight her 17-year-old son carried. After her husband's death 3 years ago, their family had scraped by on her salary as a hospital aide, supplemented by Marcus's weekend job at the local grocery store. The prestigious Moreland Engineering Scholarship awarded to the top-performing student in the state represented not just Marcus's dreams, but a lifeline for their family. "You know what your father used to say. Excellence isn't an act, it's a habit," Marcus finished, reciting his father's favorite quote. He glanced at the photograph on his desk, his father in graduation regalia, the first in their family to earn a college degree. "That's right. And you've got excellence running through your veins." She kissed the top of his head. "Just remember to get some sleep tonight. That brain of yours needs rest to show what it can really do." The next morning at Westlake High School, Marcus had arrived early, as was his habit. The hallways were still quiet as he made his way to his locker. He noticed Mrs. Peterson, the school's administrative assistant who would be proctoring the state exams, watching him with narrowed eyes as he organized his materials. "Good morning, Mrs. Peterson," he offered politely. She nodded curtly. "Mr. Williams, I see you're early again." "Yes, ma'am. Big day today." "Indeed." She lingered a moment longer than necessary before continuing down the hall, her heels clicking on the linoleum. Marcus shrugged off the encounter. Mrs. Peterson had always been cold toward him, despite his perfect academic record and position as junior class president. He'd learned long ago that some people at Westlake, where only 12% of the student body was black, viewed his success with suspicion rather than celebration. The testing room had buzzed with nervous energy as students filed in. Marcus caught the eye of his best friend, Jamal, who gave him a thumbs up from across the room. They'd studied together all semester, pushing each other toward excellence. Jamal wanted the State University's engineering program. Marcus had his sights set on MIT. Mrs. Peterson had paced the front of the room, reciting the testing protocols with exaggerated precision. Any form of cheating will result in immediate disqualification and potential disciplinary action. This includes unauthorized materials, communication with other students, or any suspicious behavior. Her eyes had lingered on Marcus as she emphasized the word suspicious. Once the exam began, Marcus fell into a familiar rhythm, the equations and problems unlocking in his mind like puzzles he'd been born to solve. Mathematics had always been his sanctuary, logical, consistent, and fair in ways the world often wasn't. Halfway through the 3-hour exam, he noticed Mrs. Peterson hovering near his desk more frequently than others. Each time she passed, she peered over his shoulder with unusual intensity. Marcus tried to ignore the distraction, focusing instead on the complex differential equation before him. During a particularly challenging section, Marcus employed a solution method his father had taught him, an elegant approach, not typically covered in high school curriculum, but perfectly valid for the problem at hand. He worked through it methodically, filling the margins with his calculations. He'd just completed the work when Mrs. Peterson stopped abruptly behind him. She stared at his paper, her breath catching. Without a word, she strode from the room, the door clicking shut behind her. Marcus exchanged a puzzled glance with Jamal before returning to his exam. Minutes later, Mrs. Peterson returned, whispering something to Mr. Collins. Both looked in Marcus's direction with expressions that made his stomach tighten. And now, an hour later, he stood flanked by police officers as his classmates stared in shock. "I didn't cheat," Marcus said firmly, his voice threatening to break. "I would never." "Save it for the principal's office," Mrs. Peterson snapped, gathering his exam paper with gloved hands as though it were contaminated. "We have proof." The walk to the principal's office felt like a death march. Students in the hallway stopped and stared, phones already out, as they captured his humiliation for social media. By the time they reached Principal Harrington's office, Marcus's legs were trembling so badly he nearly collapsed into the offered chair. "Marcus," Principal Harrington began, her voice artificially measured, "Mrs. Peterson has reported serious concerns about your conduct during today's examination." "Ma'am, I didn't cheat," Marcus repeated, his hands gripping the armrests. "I can explain any of my work." "She witnessed you using unauthorized solution methods that exactly match an online answer key," Mrs. Peterson interrupted. "Methods no student at your level should know." Marcus shook his head vehemently. "That's my dad's method. He taught me advanced techniques before he passed. It's not from any answer key." "Mrs. Peterson slammed her hand on the desk. "I called 911 because what you've done is theft, intellectual property theft. You've stolen these answers, and now you're lying to our faces." The taller officer, whose name badge read Officer Daniels, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, you called us for a cheating incident." "This is more than cheating," Mrs. Peterson insisted, her voice rising. "He somehow accessed secure testing materials. That's a criminal offense." Principal Harrington held up her hand. "Let's all calm down. Marcus, we take academic integrity very seriously at Westlake. The coincidence is too great. Your solutions match methods not taught in our curriculum." Because my father was a mathematician, Marcus protested, tears now threatening. He showed me different approaches. I can prove it, call my mom. She knows all about it. We've already contacted your mother, Principal Harrington said. She's on her way. In the meantime, we need to search your belongings for any unauthorized materials. Marcus watched helplessly as they emptied his backpack onto the desk, examining each notebook, each scrap of paper. His phone was confiscated, his calculator scrutinized. Finding nothing, Officer Daniels asked him to turn out his pockets, which yielded only his house key and bus pass. I didn't cheat, Marcus repeated, his voice hollow now. The office door flew open as Denise Williams burst in, still wearing her hospital scrubs. What is going on here? Why are police officers involved in a school matter? Mrs. Williams, Principal Harrington began. I'm afraid we've caught Marcus cheating on his state exam. That's impossible, Denise said immediately, moving to stand beside her son. Marcus has never cheated a day in his life. Then perhaps you can explain how your son is using advanced calculus methods that match exactly with an answer key. Mrs. Peterson found online. Principal Harrington slid Marcus's exam across the desk. Denise glanced at the paper, then squared her shoulders. His father taught him. Robert was a mathematician before he passed. He worked with Marcus on advanced concepts since he was little. A convenient explanation, Mrs. Peterson muttered. Excuse me. Denise's voice dropped dangerously low. Mrs. Williams, we understand this is upsetting. Principal Harrington interjected. But we have protocols to follow. Marcus's exam has been invalidated, and he's suspended pending a full investigation. Suspended, Marcus and his mother exclaimed simultaneously. For 2 weeks, Principal Harrington confirmed. And he'll be barred from taking the makeup exam, which means he'll receive a 0 on this portion of his state assessment. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Without that score, the Moreland Scholarship was gone. His MIT dreams evaporated. 3 years of perfect grades and sleepless nights, rendered meaningless by a false accusation. This is outrageous, Denise said, her voice shaking with fury. You have no evidence that my son cheated, only that he knows advanced mathematics, which should be celebrated, not punished. Mrs. Peterson found the exact solution method on a website that sells exam answers. Principal Harrington explained, her tone suggesting she was being extraordinarily patient. Then perhaps Mrs. Peterson should explain why she was browsing websites that sell exam answers. Denise countered, causing the administrative assistant to flush darkly. I was investigating my suspicions. Mrs. Peterson snapped. Officer Daniels cleared his throat again. If I may, this appears to be an educational matter rather than a criminal one. Without concrete evidence of theft or access to secure materials, there's little for us to do here. But Mrs. Peterson began. We'll be going, the second officer added firmly. Please contact us only if you discover actual evidence of a crime. As the officers left, Principal Harrington folded her hands on her desk. Regardless, the academic consequences stand. Marcus is suspended effective immediately. You may appeal to the school board if you wish. Oh, I'll do much more than appeal, Denise promised, gathering Marcus's belongings and helping him to his feet. My son has worked too hard to have his future destroyed by unfounded accusations. As they walked toward the exit, Mrs. Peterson called after them. Perhaps next time he'll learn to stay in his lane. The words echoed in the hallway like a slap. The news spread through Westlake High and the surrounding community like wildfire. By evening, local social media groups were ablaze with opinions, the story morphing with each retelling. Some claimed Marcus had been caught with an actual answer key. Others suggested he'd hacked the school's computer system. The truth that he'd been accused solely because his solution method appeared too advanced was lost in the noise. At home that night, Marcus sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at his father's old textbooks. Denise ended a phone call and sat beside him, taking his hands in hers. "That was Mr. Washington from the NYACP," she said quietly. "He's agreed to help us fight this." Marcus nodded numbly. "It won't matter. The damage is done. Even if they reverse the suspension, I've missed the exam. The scholarship committee won't wait." "Don't you dare give up," Denise said fiercely. "Your father would never allow it, and neither will I." Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Jamal. "Bro, everyone knows this is BS. We're planning a walkout tomorrow. This isn't over." The next day, Denise took Marcus to the district administration building to file a formal appeal. As they approached the entrance, they were surprised to find a small group of students and parents waiting for them, including Jamal and his mother. "What's all this?" Marcus asked, overwhelmed. "Support," Jamal said simply, clapping him on the shoulder. "We're not letting them railroad you." Inside, they were met by Superintendent Garcia, who appeared visibly uncomfortable with the growing crowd in his lobby. "Mrs. Williams, I understand your concerns, but there are proper channels. We're here to ensure those channels remain open and transparent," interrupted Mrs. Lawson, a community activist and parent of a Westlake sophomore. "This young man deserves due process." While the adults argued, Marcus's phone buzzed with notifications. Someone had started a hashtag, Jashi Justice for Marcus, that was gaining traction locally. Students were sharing stories of Mrs. Peterson's history of targeting minority students, patterns no one had connected until now. Later that afternoon, a local news van pulled up outside the Williams apartment. The reporter, a young black woman named Kendra Mitchell, had received an anonymous tip about the case. "I'd like to hear your side of the story, Marcus," she said, setting up for an interview in their living room. "Too often, these narratives get controlled by institutions rather than the individuals affected." As Marcus recounted the events, he felt something shift inside him, fear giving way to resolve. "I've spent my whole life following rules, getting perfect grades, believing that if I just worked hard enough, doors would open," he told Kendra. "Yesterday showed me that some people will always find reasons to close those doors, no matter what I achieve." The interview aired that evening on the local news, alongside statements from classmates and teachers attesting to Marcus's character and academic integrity. Principal Harrington declined to comment, citing student privacy concerns. Mrs. Peterson could not be reached. The next morning, Denise's phone rang at 6:23 a.m. It was Dr. Franklin, the school board president. "Mrs. Williams," he said, his voice grave. "I've just been briefed on your son's situation. I'd like to meet with you both this morning." At the district offices, they were shown to a conference room where Dr. Franklin waited alongside a woman introduced as Dr. Elaine Carter, the state's Deputy Education Commissioner. "First, let me apologize for how this matter has been handled," Dr. Franklin began. "After reviewing the facts, we have serious concerns about the process and evidence or lack thereof against Marcus." Dr. Carter nodded. "When this came to my attention through media reports, I immediately ordered a review. What we found was troubling. She opened a folder and removed Marcus's exam paper. This solution method that Mrs. Peterson claimed was evidence of cheating. It's advanced, certainly, but legitimate. In fact, it's elegant, the kind of approach we hope to see from our brightest students. The website Mrs. Peterson cited as her proof. Dr. Franklin continued. It wasn't an answer key at all, but a mathematics forum where university professors discuss various approaches to calculus problems. The post she found was dated 3 years ago and written by a professor at MIT. Marcus felt a surge of vindication, quickly followed by anger. So she just assumed I cheated because she couldn't believe I could solve it that way. Dr. Carter's expression was grim. It appears so. And when we examined Mrs. Peterson's history at Westlake, we found a disturbing pattern of similar accusations against minority students, none of which resulted in findings of actual misconduct. This raises serious concerns about bias in our testing protocols. Dr. Franklin added, we're implementing immediate changes, including diverse proctoring teams and blind review of any cheating allegations. Denise leaned forward. That's all well and good for the future. But what about my son? What about his scholarship opportunity? We're reinstating Marcus immediately, with a formal apology. Dr. Franklin said. And he'll be permitted to complete his exam this afternoon, with Dr. Carter herself as proctor. As for Mrs. Peterson, Dr. Carter added, she's been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. That afternoon, as Marcus settled in to retake his exam, he felt a curious calm. The testing room was quiet, with only Dr. Carter present. As she handed him the test booklet, she paused. Marcus, I want you to know something, she said quietly. 20 years ago, I was accused of cheating on my physics final because my professor couldn't believe a black woman from the South Side could score that high. She smiled slightly. I went on to earn a doctorate in that very subject. Sometimes the best revenge is extraordinary success. 2 weeks later, the Westlake Gymnasium was packed for an emergency community meeting. Dr. Franklin stood at the podium, flanked by the entire school board and district leadership team. We've gathered tonight to address the serious incidents that have come to light and to announce substantive changes to our policies. He began. But first, we owe a public apology to Marcus Williams and his family. Marcus, seated in the front row beside his mother and siblings, straightened as all eyes turned to him. The investigation into this matter has concluded. Dr. Franklin continued. Not only did Marcus not cheat, but his exam, which he was eventually allowed to complete, received the highest score in state history for the advanced mathematics section. A murmur rippled through the crowd, followed by applause. Furthermore, our review uncovered a pattern of discriminatory practices by certain staff members, which we are addressing with immediate terminations and policy reforms. In the back of the room, Mrs. Peterson sat stone-faced, her attorney whispering urgently in her ear. Beside her, Principal Harrington stared at her folded hands. We've also discovered that Mrs. Peterson's call to emergency services was not her first such action. Dr. Franklin revealed, records show she has called police on minority students 6 times in the past 2 years for non-emergency academic issues, a practice that endangers our students and wastes public resources. The audience gasped, then erupted in angry murmurs. In light of these findings, Dr. Franklin concluded, The board has unanimously voted to implement comprehensive anti-bias training for all staff, create a diverse community oversight committee for testing protocols, and establish a scholarship fund for minority students pursuing STEM fields, the Marcus Williams Excellence Fund. The gymnasium exploded in cheers and applause. Marcus sat in shock as Dr. Carter approached him, holding a large envelope. "The Moreland Engineering Scholarship Committee asked me to deliver this personally," she said, handing it to him. "Congratulations, Marcus. MIT is lucky to have you." As Marcus accepted the envelope with trembling hands, he caught sight of Mrs. Peterson being escorted from the gymnasium by security. Their eyes met briefly, hers defiant, his resolute. Later that night, as the Williams family celebrated at their kitchen table, Marcus's phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. "Hello. Is this Marcus Williams?" came an unfamiliar voice. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Professor James Chen from MIT's Department of Mathematics. I understand you'll be joining us next fall." Marcus nearly dropped the phone. Yes, sir. "I saw your examination work that caused all the controversy. That solution approach using the Williams method, as we call it in academic circles, was brilliant." "The Williams method," Marcus repeated, confused. "Indeed, named after Dr. Robert Williams, who published a paper on it 12 years ago. He was your father, I believe." Marcus sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "Yes, but I had no idea it was named after him. He just taught it to me as another way to solve the problem." Professor Chen laughed warmly. "Your father's work revolutionized approaches to differential equations in certain contexts. Not well known in high school circles, perhaps, but quite respected at the university level. I'd be honored if you'd consider joining my research team when you arrive." After hanging up, Marcus found his mother and siblings staring at him expectantly. "Dad has a mathematical method named after him," he said wonderingly. "The very method Mrs. Peterson accused me of stealing." Denise's eyes filled with tears as she pulled Marcus into a fierce hug. "He always said knowledge was the one thing no one could take from you. He was almost right, they can try. But if you stand firm in your truth, they will fail." 3 months later, Marcus stood at the podium as valedictorian of Westlake High School. The audience before him included his family, his community supporters, Dr. Carter, and even Professor Chen, who had flown in for the occasion. "When I was suspended and accused of cheating for knowing too much," Marcus began, "I learned something no textbook could teach me. I learned that excellence can be threatening to those who question your right to achieve it. I learned that systems designed to measure merit often fail to recognize it when it comes in unexpected packages." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "But I also learned something more important, that when faced with injustice, standing alone isn't the answer. My community stood with me. My truth prevailed because enough people refused to accept the alternative." In the front row, Denise Williams wiped away tears as her son continued. "My father once told me that mathematics is beautiful because it's absolute. There is no prejudice in numbers, no bias in equations. 2 + 2 = 4. Whether you're black or white, rich or poor." He believed that education was the great equalizer. Marcus touched the new Excellence in Mathematics pin on his graduation robe, not the one Mrs. Peterson had taken, but a replacement, presented to him by Dr. Carter herself. "What my father couldn't teach me, what I had to learn through experience, is that while knowledge itself may be pure, the systems we've built around it are not. Not yet. But they can be, if we have the courage to demand better. After the ceremony, as families mingled on the school lawn, Marcus found himself approached by a familiar figure, Officer Daniels, who had been present on that terrible day in the classroom. "I wanted to apologize," the officer said quietly. "I should have questioned why we were called there in the first place. The system failed you." Marcus considered this, then extended his hand. "Then help fix it. My mother's organizing a community advisory board on school discipline policies. They need input from law enforcement." Officer Daniels looked surprised, then nodded, accepting the handshake. "I'd be honored." As summer unfolded, the changes at Westlake rippled outward. The district adopted new testing protocols, emphasizing transparency and multiple layers of review for any academic misconduct allegations. Mrs. Peterson's case became a case study in implicit bias training for educators statewide. For Marcus, the vindication was sweet, but the journey had transformed him. As he packed for MIT, he came across his father's old journal, filled with mathematical notations and personal reflections. An entry from 15 years earlier caught his eye. "Taught little Marcus the differential approach today. He grasped it immediately, seeing patterns I didn't recognize until graduate school. Someday, he'll take this knowledge further than I ever could. My greatest hope is that the world will be ready to receive his brilliance without question." Marcus traced his father's handwriting with his finger, a sense of peace washing over him. The world wasn't ready yet, but he and countless others were working to make it so. One equation, one policy, one mind at a time. When Denise drove him to the airport at summer's end, she handed him a small box. Inside was his father's watch and a note. "Time moves forward only. Use yours to create the change you want to see." As the plane lifted off, carrying Marcus toward his future at MIT, he glanced at the watch now circling his wrist. The second hand swept forward steady, relentless, unstoppable. Just like progress. Just like truth. Just like him.